On today's video, I'll be breaking down my own gait analysis.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For the reason of I've been dealing with a lot of right-sided stuff for years, honestly. Right-sided low back, SI, joint stiffness, on the verge of pain. I would say more stiffness and soreness, all the way up into right jaw tightness, right flank tightness, and to temporal headaches on a really long run. If you know my history, I had a left femur fracture when I was 9 years old, have a titanium rod in there. It's going on 3 decades of bionic humanness. And I think I had some early compensation that's been pretty deeply ingrained. At least that's my hypothesis. So on today's show, I wanted to kind of just break down a gait analysis I would in the clinic using the same software that we use in the clinic, which is OnForm, in case anybody is curious. So again, this is OnForm. That's what we use. And I'm just going to run through this as I would any other gait analysis. So the very first thing that we're looking at in a gait analysis is first point of impact. So we want to see if I draw a plumb line from perpendicular, there's the buzzing, I apologize, that will be around 90 degrees perpendicular. We want to be within 7 degrees of a negative shin angle. Negative shin angle would be around, so if we drew this angle out here, so there's about 100. So I would be allowed to kind of come into the ground with that angle. And that would be a negative shin angle. Anything beyond perpendicular is a positive shin angle. And I'm about 7 degrees positive, which usually occurs at a little quicker speeds, more of a positive shin angle if you're sprinting, things like that. I come from a sprint background, so that's where we're going to see some of this stuff at. So that's a clear. The next thing we're looking at up the chain is, and we should do this side to side. I'm doing this for demonstration purposes. So when we see a knee flexion angle, you'll see elites will get upwards of 65 degrees of knee flexion at impact, which is metabolically costly on anterior thigh musculature, but it also reduces impact greatly. So over the duration of something like a marathon, it's kind of this, cost effectiveness equation of metabolics versus impact on the system, which you still have to deal with metabolically at some phase. So here we're at about 29 degrees of knee flexion. So I guess I'm not elite. And then we want to look at the next thing I would look at is something like hip extension. So if I scrub through here, sorry, let's clear that out. I'm going to pause, clear. So we'll look at hip extension on this side. So 15 degrees was thought to be like the bare minimum. I would say actually 30 degrees is bare minimum. So again, if I draw an angle off of my torso, not perpendicular, because you can see that my angle is forward in space. I draw that to my hip, draw that down my leg. And it's hard to kind of gauge exactly where that's at, but you can see that's not that much relative hip extension to my torso lean, all right? So it's not that it's neutral, but you'd be like, man, off perpendicular. So if I move this to perpendicular, like, oh, it's not bad. That's not where my torso is in relation. So it's about lumbar spine, pelvis, and then where your femur is moving in relation to that, that's going to get terminal hip extension. Pros will get upwards of 40 to 50 degrees of hip extension at peak hip extension. And then the conversation becomes, well, do I have a neutral spine, or is there actually a big curve that's being applied like a bow and arrow all the way through, peaking at TL junction like the handle of the bow and arrow, and that's where I'm getting this arc from to create strain or stretch on the anterior fascia or anterior fascial line, if you're a Thomas Myers fan, across the front of the body. So here, some people would say, hey, you're not maxing out that anterior sling via maybe not getting good T-spine extension, not getting TL junction extension, which gets into a whole other scenario. So very next thing, and again, I apologize for the buzzing. That's part of the price we're going to pay for technology. So I'm going to clear that out. We're going to roll through. Now, what I'm going to look at is what I call the knee flexion angle of return. This doesn't get talked about a ton, But here's my peak knee flexion angle of return. All right. So if I go through, so it's about 79 degrees. So I would say we want to definitely see it 90 or above on almost everybody. Now, if you're running a really slow, you're slogging 15-minute mile trail runner, it's not going to happen. Elites, you're going to be upwards of 65 degrees, right? This angle where their heel may be, if we go up to 65, I mean, they're going to be in there. Well, what's that do? That does two things. It creates a shorter lever so you can get a better leg turnover, a quicker turnover. It also identifies to us that we're going to be using something like the hamstring or the posterior chain a little bit more as we kind of pull at the ground or push, depending on what type of runner you are. So there's some other things to look at, but I'm going to go ahead and fast forward quite a bit because I switch directions here. And this is where the big reveals come from, at least with my gait, because as we'll see on the Runeasi tech here in a sec, there's some definite left-right asymmetries, which is one of the bigger things that we're going to see in a runner. So the first one would be, let's look at crossover. So we want to find as best we can, and again, this is on video that has parallax, but if we're looking at crossover, we want to draw a plumb line off of this medium or the middle of the sacrum or the middle of your butt crack and drop that down. The inside edge of the foot or the medial edge of the foot should be right on that line. Now, as I do this, you can also see something interesting. So can you kind of appreciate here that there is a little bit of angle occurring? So even though I'm doing good with my foot to my hip, do you see how I'm offsetting with a little bit of left torso lean? No bueno. So is it left torso lean or am I placing my hip under my body? I don't know. But I feel that when I run, and I felt that for a very long time. We go over to the right foot at impact. And you're going to see a really different presentation, right? So a plumb line almost. So if we come down from there, I can draw like spine goes through the ground and then medial edge. Like that's perfect. And you can see that there's no torso lean or maybe what we call antalgia. So that's a big deal. Now let's look at my feet. That would be the next thing. Well, let's play it out for a few strides here. We'll speed it up a little bit. We're going to look at torso rotation. I'd say I do a pretty decent job bilaterally. But yeah, it's almost like I'm throwing my left hip underneath the middle of my mass to maybe make up for some perceived instability, some actual instability. There was probably a lot of fear avoidance back in the day, but you can see that every once in a while I'll cross over on that left side. But in a classic definition of crossover, I need to draw the line all the way down my spine and realize, well, my spine is actually outside of that left foot, which is not the greatest thing in the world, which could be causing a lot of the tightness that I'm perceiving or feeling or dealing with around the side because I'm having to catch it. It's like I'm being swept in the wind. The wind is blowing me left to right, right? So now let's zoom in on the feet because everybody wants to look at this stuff on a gait analysis. So at the first point of impact, so let's go with the right first. And again, you have to catch it. So a bit out on the toe, go through supination. We want to look not necessarily at the quantity of pronation, which I don't have a whole lot of, but we want to look at the angular velocity. I'd say, and you can tell how much of a 4-foot runner I am. Here I am in a ultra, pretty neutral or low pro ultra. This is what was at the office that I just grabbed. Over here, same thing, good supinated position, angular velocity, about the same. So we'll let that play just so we can kind of watch it. But again, I'm a very 4-foot runner. I'm going to be predominated mainly with injuries below the knee is what the data would tell us. If we go up a little bit here and look at if this thing would let me move. Here's one of the big misconceptions. So we talk about hip drop. Well, first of all, do I have hip drop? Oh. Not really. What we're looking for, though, is we want to see rotation occurring. So you should see posterior rotation of the hemipelvis of the foot that's contacting the ground. That's anywhere from 3 to 5 degrees, depending on anatomy and technique. Why? That the posterior rotation is the biggest decelerator of the lower extremity, which then allows you to offload the spine. I do a pretty good job, but again, we have this left to right asymmetry and lean. So I'm going to bail out of this app. That's kind of the quick and dirty on the gait analysis part. And there's a lot more to look at. Obviously, we could look at cadence, all that stuff. But now I'm going to pull up the Runeasi app and we'll look at this. So this was that run yesterday. And you can see I did another one. And this was in office on a treadmill, which again, it is what it is. But let's just kind of look at the overview. So this is that running quality score that Runeasi came up with. This is more to communicate to a patient, and we can see that my symmetry is not great, dynamic stability doing pretty darn good, and then impact loading not awesome. Now when we go into the details, let's go, and we'll wait a second for this to open up. Oh, let me back out of that. But you're going to get a graphical representation of all this data, and it's color coded, which if you're like me and you're colorblind, not the greatest, but you can still figure it out. So we have right leg on top and then left leg on bottom, and this is looking at impact magnitude. So this is how much force is being sent up to your pelvis, right? So this is the amount of force being picked up in the pelvis, and you can see the right is a lot higher than the left. And that's what, you get this biofeedback version of this. So while I was running on the treadmill yesterday, I could see my right side was being loaded heavier and faster than the left. The left almost had no asymmetrical impact magnitude. Then you go to impact duration. So how fast does that force get to the pelvis? And you can see when I first started, it was really quick, right? So the amount of milliseconds was reduced of how long it took that force to get to my right side versus the left. And I started working on stuff. Well, can I just feel like I get off that right side quicker? Can I increase my cadence? Can I just be lighter on my feet overall? All these kind of coaching cues you've always heard. It didn't really change a whole lot. It changed through the run, but if I would have not thought about anything, would it have changed anyways? Possibly. Next one, dynamic stability. So this is basically coronal plane or side-to-side shift of my pelvis. This isn't that bad either side, and they kind of go hand in hand. They jump all around. But this was actually really decent, really, really good for most people. And then ground contact time, this is looking at how long I'm on the ground. So you can see as I get warmed up in the beginning, a little bit more ground contact time. The right, I'm on the ground longer than I am on the left by a little bit, but still, we're seeing more impact magnitude, right? We're seeing more or longer impact duration, a shorter impact duration on the right. So I'm having more force that travels up to my pelvis or spine faster, and then I'm on that foot longer. What's all that mean? And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can get rid of this annoying buzzing. And all that breaks down to is, for me, the data showing me there's more impact on the right. I think a lot of runners would come into my office. I've run for a long time, and they kind of know, like, yeah, this right side gets more sore when I work out or run. This right side gets tighter. Well, there's probably more workload happening. Well, why? The biggest reason that we have asymmetrical offloading is compensatory changes around an injury, right? A prior injury, an injury that's going on, pain without pathology, right? Which is more common than we think. You can have an Achilles or a knee or a patellar tendon or something that's painful and not pathologized due to all sorts of things. Again, I've told this story. I tell this story in my book as well. I didn't even realize that post femur fracture, I had a limp when I ran until I played freshman football. And one of my coaches called out the limp, and I could see it obviously when we were doing our first ever film review for football. And he's like, "Beard, why are you limping?" I don't know. I didn't know there was. And even though I was conscious of it then and I tried to change it, I couldn't change it. I'm conscious of it now. Now, is it a limp? No, but maybe this left-sided lean, right, is my workaround to that. Now, how I work on that could be, there's a variety of ways to work on that. Is there a true instability in my left side? I believe there is. And I don't know if it's a true weakness or a motor control thing. I would have to venture to say more of a motor control issue because like I can't do a full pistol on my left side. I have all of the mobility pieces, right? Maybe my ankle dorsiflexion isn't awesome. Hip internal rotation on that left side is not awesome, but I have adequate mobility. So I have the working parts to get into these positions, but right versus left, far different. Strength right versus left, and something like a lateral squat or a split squat is very different. Springiness or leg stiffness on that left side is very different. So when I do single leg pogo jumps, single leg jump roping, rebound jumps, very different. And you know, so one could say, well, we're just going to train that side to become stronger, stiffer. I'm telling you right now, I've been doing that for 3 decades. It ain't changing. So this gets into the ideas of maybe, and I don't want to go too woo-woo, but things like the body keeps a score and, deep-rooted trauma. I mean, that was a traumatic thing for me. One of the, more traumatic things that happened in my life at an early age. So I probably didn't process it well. It changed a lot of my concepts about movement and how I fit into the world. I'm not saying I'm going woo-woo, but I'm going to try to work on this thing and not just try to attack it by thinking weakness is predominating my system. It's just a compensatory lean. Hey, let's lean to the right and run. I've felt this thing forever. If I was going to fix it consciously, right? I'm now consciously aware of my dysfunction, and I need to move into what? Conscious function, then eventually subconscious or unconscious function. So now that I'm aware, and I've been aware for a long time, it's like, well, what's the play? And this is where maybe I need help from a practitioner, somebody in my office, somebody else, to help me kind of suss out, well, why am I getting all of this right-sided tightness and stiffness and, trigger point formation? And then how do I change that left-sided compensation? Yeah. So was it eye-opening to me what I found on this gait analysis? Not really. That trunk lean, even though I felt that, seeing it on video, which this is the same thing a lot of people experience, seeing themselves run or seeing myself run, I was like, holy cow, that's way different than I thought it was. And I'm surprised nobody's ever called that out when they're running behind me or, in a race or something like that. So yeah, hopefully here in maybe a couple months or 2 months or so, I'll be able to give an update as I'm working on this and working through it. But if you're out there dealing with something and, this is the conversation that we always have in the clinic or with runners, that we have to figure out, first of all, if you're injured or you're just having pain. That's the first thing. Well, either one of those will alter your running mechanics. So then it becomes chicken or egg, right? Should we look at running mechanics or should we be working on other issues to then change mechanics? Welcome to the art of what we try to do in the clinic, and a lot of practitioners and coaches are trying to do of what's the variable you should be messing with, and again, what variables are being affected by XYZ. So should I work on my running or should I be working on other stuff? It could be a little bit of both. It could be a perfect option out there. There could be a big, it's a big gray zone. So I'll keep you updated on that. But if you're ever interested in a gait analysis, you can hop on our website on chirofarm.com. You can set up a gait analysis with myself. You can do that virtually or in person. And I hope you got something valuable out of this video. See you guys next time.
Yeah. Yeah.